Hello and welcome to Pole Position with myself, Brad Stansfield, and Alex AJ Johnston.
Hello, Brad.
Hello, Alex, and great to be partnering with you again on an exciting new foray into the world of podcasting and YouTubing.
Very exciting.
So, Pole Position is a new Tasmanian politics podcast dedicated mostly to Tasmanian politics.
I think federal politics might get a mention today, Brad.
I fear it might. Look, at the end of last year, people might be aware we were running a podcast called The Fontcast. Beach, one of the principals of Font, retired. So the business was retired and so was the Fontcast. The biggest question I got was not, what are you doing, Brad? It was, what about the Fontcast? Well, we are here. We are back, and we are hoping to give you something which is a Fontcast on steroids, I suppose, Alex. Take all the good bits of Fontcast, add some exciting new elements, and try and keep you all well informed about what's going on in Tasmanian politics.
Yeah, we'll miss Beach, but we'll battle on without him. And the Fontcast did have some loyal listeners, and I got the similar questions. So hopefully this scratches that itch.
Hopefully. We will do our best.
Very good. What have we got on the show today?
Well,
Bradley?
coming up today, we've got a feast, actually. We have, you know what Tasmanian politics is like. It's never famine. It always seems to be feast. So we've got the truth, I hope, about the shoot, shag, marry gate, taste gate, whatever you want to call it. Is it a storm in a teacup or something more? We'll take a look at the shock defection of Helen Burnett from the Greens to the crossbench and what it means. I think that did catch people by surprise. We'll have a really brief look at upcoming Tasmanian political year, a couple of big things in the first half, the known unknowns, if you like, the budget and the LegCo elections. We've got some exclusive polling from our sponsors at Enterprise Marketing and Research Services about Australia Day and what people think of that. Yeah, so stay tuned for that. And I think, as Alex mentioned at the top, we are going to have to say a bit of a look about what's happening with the federal coalition and the Nats. But before I do all that, Alex, maybe we should just introduce ourselves to our viewers.
Well, we should. I mean, maybe people are listening for the first time and haven't heard us give our backstory before. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Sure. So I'm
interested in this.
Yeah, well, let's not make it too long, but I've been sort of in and around Tasmanian politics for about 20 years. I started in Mike Gaffney's election ad in 2002 as a fresh-faced kid at Don College. I was the token teenager shaking his hand. But I grew up in a household, I guess, that was always interested in politics. My mum and dad were both involved in the first pulp mill debate way back in the day.
Wow.
Dad actually went to Canberra.
What side were they on?
Dad went to Canberra with Christine Milne on behalf of the farmers who thought it probably wasn't a great idea. Yeah. So always political as a kid, and started in the Win newsroom at 19 as a sports reporter, but I always sort of gravitated towards, being the backup political person. Quick stint with the Treasurer. At the time, Michael Aird, I was the worst electorate advisor in the history of Tasmanian politics.
It goes well with the worst Treasurer in history of Tasmanian politics.
Well, that's not fair, but I was replaced by Dean Winter.
Name me a worse one.
I was replaced by Dean Winter, who said it was the easiest transition ever because I'd done nothing. So then I went back to journalism, and that's when I really sort of started to get involved, and I was the political reporter for Southern Cross for a long time, and that's when I really got the bug. And there's a trend developing here because after the 2014 election, I went and worked in opposition for Labor, Brian Green and then Rebecca White, and that's when you and I really tested our friendship. We were pretty nasty to each other on Twitter there for a while.
Well, maybe, yeah.
And then went back to Win News. I had a little stint at Mona, actually, which was very nice, a little palate cleanser. And then went back to Win as the news director. And then history repeated again because I thought, oh, no, maybe you can be a political advisor. And I went and worked for the 3 freshly elected Jackie Lambie Network MPs, and we know how that ended. And then now, well, yeah, I'm doing a few things, including a little bit of PR, trying to be
give your business a plug.
No, it's called curated communication.
Yep.
And and we've got 3 amazing colleagues, life's pretty good. But this podcast, I'm excited about. Brad, what about you? How did you get the Tasmanian political bug?
Yeah, so I was first introduced to Tasmanian politics officially through the pages of the Mercury in 2004 when Helen Burnett, then chief political reporter at the Mercury, wrote a story about how then Senator Eric Abetz, now Tasmanian Treasurer, had employed this bloke from the wild and rugged King Island to come and help him do his media. I think she was writing it rather sceptically. I came to politics then in 2004 from King Island, where I was running the King Island Courier, which coincidentally I now own. Then worked for Eric for 7 years, right through to 2010. It's had some ups and downs, as you can imagine.
A few ups and downs, yeah. Maybe we'll save those for another pod.
Yeah, maybe. Then switched to Will Hodgman, then opposition leader, just before the 2010 state election. I worked for him as a media advisor. That was the infamous tied election, 10-10-5, which resulted in Labor continuing in government with the Greens. Then after that, I went and worked for Will as his chief of staff from 2010 through
Things
to
went a bit
2018.
better at the
Things
next
went a bit
election,
better. We
yeah.
won a couple of elections. The rest is history. It was a glorious golden age for the Liberal Party and for Tasmania.
Okay, wrap it up.
2018, I left politics, went and worked for Font PR, as mentioned, and I'm now working out of my business, Enterprise Marketing and Research Services.
Which is interesting. So you've taken over that from Mary Massner.
From Mary Massner,
Yep.
that's right. So running that and also running, PR and GR out of that, the consulting arm of that business called Strategies. So there you are. Still a fair interest in politics on my side too, I think it'd be fair to say.
Yes, there's not much that happens in Tasmanian politics. That's why I thought pole position was a good name, because obviously pole, there's a little EMRS pun there, but also you are always at the front of the grid when it comes to Tasmania. I've been in here on big political mornings and your phone does run hot. You admit that you are still, people still ring you for a bit of advice, don't they?
Well, I still keep my ear close to the ground.
Yeah, very good.
All right, let's jump straight into it. That's enough of the preambles.
Can't wait.
Let's start with the news section, which is really going to start to annoy people, I suspect. Stansfield says.
Stansfield.
All right. So, scandal of the year or storm in a taste of Tasmania plastic wine glass, or the glass ones this year?
No, plastic.
Plastic
definitely.
wine glass.
Yep.
So I'm referring, of course, to the so-called shoot, shag or marry gate, which took place earlier this year. For those unfamiliar with what happened a few weeks ago, a group of Labor MPs, including Ms Rebecca White, the now federal member for Lyons and Assistant Minister for Women, Sarah Lovell, State MP, MLC, I think, Shadow Minister for Health, I believe, and Shadow Minister for Women, and her colleague Ella Haddad, the Shadow Attorney General and Shadow Minister for Equality. Not, there may have been others, but these are the three who have been focused on. Apparently they all decided it would be a good idea to quote Dan Andrews, get on the beers at the Taste event, the Taste of Summer. This is a festival down here in Hobart. And then decided, possibly slightly unwisely, to take part in a very loud and public game of shoot, shag or marry, where they reportedly rated Liberal state, maybe federal MPs, I'm not sure, accordingly. The only problem, they were overheard by a person who just turned out to be a Liberal Party member. This is Tasmania after all. And their subsequent written apologies, probably wasn't the wisest thing to do, made their way into the media via David Killick, remember Killer, at the Mercury newspaper. So the question is, does it matter? Did it matter? Does anyone care? My view is, I think the bell was, the cat was built a little bit on this when the Premier late last week requested a photo come down that had been put on the internet by the Liberal ex Facebook account, and then earlier this week sort of said, time to move on, not something he was focused on. I do think that the Premier was...
Well, the Premier says we should move on. Maybe we should just move on, Brad.
Yeah, well, that's right. I think the Premier was reflecting a large part of the community feedback he was getting at that point, and that people were sort of saying it was time to move on from this. And look, I tend to agree. I mean, I think the incident was initially titillating, certainly embarrassing for Labor MPs, but the Liberals' attempts to keep it going did start look increasingly like they were flogging a dead horse. Look, without doubt, the actions of those MPs was certainly, at the very least, highly hypocritical, particularly given the shadow portfolios I just read out and real ones in Ms White's case. And it has been pointed out, I don't think people need to think too hard to consider what might have happened if the boot had been on the other foot, so to speak, and it had been male, Liberal, white, Conservative MPs taking part in the same game. They probably would have all been frog marched out of the Parliament by now. That all aside, to me, the biggest message this sends, Alex, is about, in my view, the serious lack of judgment and work ethic of the Tasmanian Labor opposition. Sure, politicians are normal people, entitled to normal lives, if this is normal. But remember, just 6 months ago, these people were telling Tasmanians at the election that they were up for running the state. Now they're pissing on at the taste, playing loud, crude, vulgar drinking games. I just think it sends a message that they're just not serious about their job. They aren't serious about their jobs as MPs. They're not serious about their jobs as opposition MPs, and it sends to me a message they're not serious about winning. And to me, that is the worst indictment on an opposition, and I think it's a disservice to all Tasmanians. And really, I hope that the opposition learn from this and understand politics is not a game, it's a serious business, and if you want to run the state, you've got to be serious, not play games. Alex?
Well, I mean, are you upset you didn't get invited to the taste, Brad? I mean, it's
I did get an invite, but I didn't go.
Look, this is a tricky one for me to talk about because I think, those in the political world know that I was there on that day.
Right.
And there's been a lot of accusations made. It was put to me by someone who raised the matter with me that I was egging others on.
Right.
And there's been a lot said about this whole thing that I find wildly inaccurate, but I probably have to cop to that.
Here's your chance to...
Egging others on. I think I've been egging others on for the best part of 41 years. I'm going to be egging you on throughout this podcast. So,
Yes.
I mean, look, I just think it's been blown out of proportion. I mean, a few of the things you said there, I mean, politicians on both sides had a wonderful time at the taste. Obviously, this one, the fun at the taste was then, written in a sober fashion in the newspaper, and it just...
Was there other MPs playing the game?
No, I don't mean that. I mean there were other MPs at the taste from both sides of the aisle, having a good time. Now, obviously, this sort of went from social to public, and then when you try to write about something like this in the cold light of day, it sounded a lot more sinister than it was. Now, obviously, everyone's having a good time. You never played Shoot, Shag, Marry, Brad?
No.
Oh, we'll have a
game.
game.
Explain it to me.
We'll have a game. Well, you come up with a conundrum of three people who are similar, and then it's not literal. It's just a anyway.
I got you.
I'll give you one. I'll give you a one before the end of the show. We'll finish the show with it. I came up with a good one in the car.
Okay.
Anyway, I just want to say that I was there, so therefore framing it as three women talking about Liberal MPs is just not accurate. And it was just a silly conversation that was overheard, and I apologise when the person raised it with me. I'm not here to talk on behalf of anyone else, but the sort of way it was framed, that it was just three women, I just think that was a bit unfair. And I push back on some of the things you said, because most of the comments said, people are allowed to let their hair down, like, is it really... people were pretty, I don't know, they thought it was more a storm in a teacup, as you've suggested. Now you raise, what if it was three male MPs? Well, I saw those comments as well, people saying, if this was three male MPs, it'd be front page news. Well, it was front page news. So I'm not sure that would change anything, really. Like you said, it was titillating. So, I think it's time to move on.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask you a few questions. It's nice.
Okay.
It's nice to have the boot on the other foot from the Fontcast. Normally you were asking me questions. So.
Yeah, okay.
So there you go. All right. You said you were there. Let's clear this up because Mr. Willie won't answer the question. Was he there?
Well, he was at the taste that day. There's photographic evidence of that. But
was he there for the game?
No, I don't think so.
Don't think so, or he wasn't? No.
No, he wasn't involved in the conversation I was having. No.
So he didn't take part in the game.
I don't think so.
Okay. I've heard some pretty horrible things reported that were said, particularly an alleged statement made about the former immigration minister Amanda Vanstone,
Yeah,
which is
I
so
heard.
bad I'm not going to repeat. You hear that or?
I heard that allegation,
Yes.
but that just didn't ring true to me. I couldn't imagine anyone saying that. So that's what I said. Some of it was fair. Some of it was a pretty, saying I was egging people on. Yeah, I think that's fair. But a lot of it, that just didn't ring true to me.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, to be fair, Alex, you're not an MP, so,
No, I know, but look, part of me is grateful for the fact that I wasn't sort of named in the story, but a part of me also felt that was unfair because then it seemed like it was just three women playing when it wasn't. It was, and look, it was very silly, and the way it was sort of framed as Labor people talking about Liberal people, I mean, it was just a silly conversation, and it wasn't like, anyway.
Gotcha. All right, one more question, and this one you'll probably find a bit easier. So I mentioned at the top there was a photo that was taken at the event, which has subsequently found its way to the public via the Tasmanian Liberals X account and their Facebook account. It was a photo, I think, of Ms. White and Ms. Lovell, I think.
Clearly in a private conversation.
Clearly in a private conversation in a public place.
Semi-public. I mean, it was a ticketed event, Brad, so semi-public. But anyway,
so you've jumped ahead of the question. So the Premier asked for that photo to come down. Now, my view is...
It was accompanied by a pretty average quote as well.
Yeah, something about being tanked. You thought that was inappropriate? I mean, my view is if you're a politician, you're going to expect to get photos taken of you without your permission all the time.
I said this to you the other day via text. No matter who you are, if you're having a private conversation, I just think let people have a private conversation, whether you're a politician or anyone. And the other thing I'll say is that photo was taken well before anyone was talking loudly. So,
right, okay.
I thought that was a step too far.
All right. Okay, well, thanks for clearing that up, Alex. Anything else you want to add on the matter, or as you said at the outset, time to move on, you think?
Time to move on. I mean, one for the road. Nixon, Reagan, George Bush, Senior. Shoot, shag, marry.
Well, they're all blokes.
Yeah, but that's the game. You don't take it literally.
Okay.
It's just like
Gotcha.
Right. It's not literal.
Right. Okay.
It's just silly.
Who are they again?
Richard Nixon,
yeah,
Ronald Reagan, and George Bush Senior.
Well, if I had to rank them, I'd have Reagan, George W, and then Nixon in order. I rank them.
So you're marrying.
Well, no, I'm
Reagan
not saying that. Just saying that's how I'd rank them. But you're saying that's the same but different is I think what you're saying.
What's that?
It's like a ranking mechanism.
I mean, maybe, yeah. I mean, anyway.
How about you? You'd have Nixon at the top, or?
Oh, for entertainment purposes.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
All right. There you go. You heard it here first.
Well, I hope we're recording this conversation as well as Nixon recorded some of his.
So do I. Just check. No, it is recording. All
Very good.
All right.
Very
Let's move on. And
great. What's next on
next? More of you, Alex. Even better. This is great. So, Helen Burnett, we mentioned at the top, has been an unexpectedly busy start to the Tasmanian political year. So Helen Burnett defected from the Greens to the crossbench right at the start of the year. Might have been the 2nd of January, I think, beating John Tucker's previous 4th of January Tucks back. So you've always got to be awake in the first week of Tasmanian politics. Pretty unexpected. People were caught by surprise. Alex, your firm, Curated Communications, was engaged to assist Helen. I saw it on the LinkedIn there, you holding the mic next to her. Mm-hmm. So, what happened? What's the story?
Well, I can't tell you too much more than isn't in the public. Yeah, the former Deputy Hobart Lord Mayor and Greens MP decided life would be better as an independent. And, she engaged us to really just help with the logistics, making sure the media was there because she knew what she wanted to say, and what she told me is what she told the public, that she didn't feel like her voice was being heard in the way that it would as an independent, and time for a new chapter. But I agree with you. I mean, if I was just purely commentating, it was a shock. It was a shock to me when Helen broke the news.
And when was that? Can you disclose that?
Oh, well, a few days before,
right. Okay.
It wasn't planned for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean,
That was the sense I got. It wasn't 3 months in the making.
oh well, not from a PR point of view, but Helen said herself that it was a long time in the making in terms of her decision. She said it was something she'd been thinking about for a long time. So obviously, in the end, she decided to make the big call, and it is a big call. It is a big call, and I think that it's a call that wouldn't have happened a few years ago. I take Helen Burnett out of the equation, but you mentioned John Tucker, and this temptation to become an independent and sit on the crossbench and have all this autonomy. I think if you look across and see Craig Garland and Peter George and Christy Johnston having the freedom to speak out on things, whenever they want, must be appealing to, obviously it was appealing to Helen Burnett, but there must be members of the other two parties that think, wouldn't it be great just to be able to run my own race?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the increasing of the size of the parliament and the lowering of the quota has emboldened people to think that they could go it alone when previously they never thought that was an option. I think that's certainly played a factor. Now, I think in Helen's view, from Helen's perspective, I think it's a bit silly because I cannot see her getting re-elected as an independent. I just do not see room for her in the electorate of Clark with the strong Green vote, strong Liberal vote, strong Labor vote, and Christy Johnston. I can't see how she survives as an independent. Time will tell, but I do think she's probably on her last term as a state MP.
Well, she was asked about the next election and she said she hadn't even thought about whether she would run again.
Yeah, well,
there
you go. Yeah.
So
anyway, look, I mean,
it's a hypothetical.
I think people know my views on these sorts of things generally. I mean, I think that loyalty is the most important quality in politics, and disloyalty is the worst. And disloyalty to a party like this, I'm not a Greens member, but Helen was a member of Hobart City Council, ran for Clark once or twice as a Greens member, may even have been on a Senate ticket once or twice as a Greens member, I suspect, Greens candidate, got elected to Parliament as a Greens candidate, was elevated to the position of Deputy Speaker as a Green, and then she says, thanks very much, flips on the birds and walks out the door. I just think it's really, really appalling and disrespectful to the party that has literally made her 20-year career, which wouldn't exist without them. And I just think generally that is a real problem in politics that we have. As for why she did it, I just think that, as I said, 20 years she thought she didn't need them and she can go it alone. I haven't heard a compelling explanation otherwise. I mean, she wants to speak out on things. Well, what's there been, one press conference since? What's it, a month later? Not exactly flooding the pages of the newspapers with all these comments that you couldn't make as a Green. And I've also heard some suggestions, which may or may not be true, that she's looking for the Senate spot of Wish Wilson is retiring and was told it was a no-go, and that might have also helped catalyse her thinking. Who knows? One little part of this, Alex, that I think that has been missed. The Greens had 5 members, now got 4. Libs have 14. So 14 and 5 was 19. So the Libs and the Greens together had a majority on the floor on a confidence vote or any legislation. 14 and 4 is 18. The Libs still have a majority with the Greens when they need it. And there's now one extra independent for them to woo if they need. So in terms of position on the floor, I would argue it's actually strengthened the Liberals' position, bizarrely.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I mean, they've got another crossbencher who they can potentially win the support of on things that are close. The crossbench will vote in all different directions. Helen Burnett said it's pretty unlikely she'll vote against her old colleagues too often, but unless she has that option now.
Interesting times ahead. All right, I am reassured, though, that the majority of Tasmanians do agree with me on this issue about Helen's decision.
I feel like there's some polling
not
coming,
Helen's
Brad.
decision specifically, but certainly generally. There is. So last week, yes, I did ask our team at EMRS to have a little look at this issue when we were in the field on a few other matters, including the gun stuff that you may have seen reported. And we asked the question, turning quickly to state politics, state member for Clark, Helen Burnett, recently left the Greens to sit as an independent. To what extent do you approve or disapprove of politicians switching parties between elections? And the results, Alex.
Drum roll, please. Do you want me to read it?
Yes.
Okay, so to that question, just 5% strongly approve, 15% somewhat approve, 26% have no firm opinion, and then we get to higher results with somewhat disapprove at 28%, strongly disapprove at 26%, which means the net approve just 20 and the net disapprove 54%.
There you go.
Didn't think you would. I mean, it's factually a fine question, but you could have the same preamble and say, to what extent do you approve or disapprove a politician becoming independent if they think they can better represent their community? Now, I know you wouldn't ask a question like that, but I'm saying you sort of led them to, switching parties, sort of, I don't know. I think you could frame it up a different way.
Would you like a few straws there to grasp at?
I'm just sort of putting the alternative, but so I mean, I think generally, taking Helen Burnett out of the equation, generally, I think the changing lane. I think when John Tucker and Lara Alexander did it, it was unpopular amongst Liberal voters. I mean, the difference there was, I guess, John Tucker got a pretty decent primary vote. Lara Alexander got elected on preferences. Helen Burnett's a different case there, where she has a stronger personal vote. So not all of these things are the same.
I think the numbers are the numbers, Alex.
Well, I'm not. Well,
Anyway,
I mean, I think you've got off to a red hot start.
Let's see what happens.
Polling, the Guns polling, got a good run.
It did. And we've got a bit more later in the show.
Probably wasn't that comfortable for your friends in the Liberal Party, so I guess you're showing that you're fiercely independent.
As I say, the numbers are numbers. All right, we'll see how Helen goes as an independent as the year progresses. She may pop up on pole position from time to time.
Yeah, and to be clear, I've obviously supported her through the transition phase. I have no ongoing relationship with her. Okay. If that changes, if she decides there's some role for our business in the background, then I'll let you know. I'll be transparent because we really value our listeners here and we want transparency, and I'm sure you'll do the same.
Absolutely.
Very good.
All right, moving on. Quick look at the year ahead. Two big issues, as I said at the outset, the sort of known unknowns that are going to frame up the first half of this year, apart from what else might happen. We have the budget, which I think is May 22nd, which is looking like it could be a pretty messy affair in terms of cuts and savings measures. And then we also have 2 Legislative Council elections this year in early May, Rosevears and Huon. Let's start with the budget. Alex, what's your view on how this is all going to pan out?
Yeah, I think it'll be the big issue of the year. I'm fascinated to know how hard Treasurer Abetz will go. We know how bad the budget situation is, and we were already starting to see it causing some headaches for ministers. I know Bridget Archer was out this week, quizzed about some potential cuts at the Launceston General Hospital, what they mean, and then we get into that sort of conversation that's all too familiar in Tasmania about it's more about recruitment and retention than cuts, and so that'll be a big theme this year. I don't know how much of an appetite Eric Abetz has for going really hard. I think Jeremy Rockcliffe hasn't shown any appetite for going really hard, and I think there's a general feeling that if you were to cut the budget too hard, it would have dire economic business confidence consequences. But you've got to do something, because last year's budget just sort of put the problem off. The interim budget just kicked the can down the road, I think, the way you described it. So it's going to be a huge issue this year. Yeah.
No, it is. Look, I mean, it really is an impossible task for Eric. He's being asked to, we've already had 2 treasurers have had a crack at it over the last 3 years to try and sort this out. Michael Ferguson didn't went well for him. Guy Barnett ended even worse for him. So Eric's the 3rd treasurer now, and in 2 years to have a look at trying to sort this out. It's trying to square a circle, really. It's very, very difficult. I'm hearing he's looking, or he's asked agencies for savings in the vicinity of $200 million a year as a starting point. Now, that's roughly 2% of the state's overall budget. Doesn't sound like a lot, but I can tell you that's reducing government expenditure by $200 million a year is a near impossibility, if not
Well,
an
I
actual
mean, we've
possibility.
talked about it before on the podcast, even Lara Giddings, when she went very hard and, got in trouble with the unions, they turned on her, for want of a better word.
That's right.
Spending slowed down, but it didn't go backwards. So
That's
this
right.
idea that you can go backwards,
It's crazy.
it's almost fanciful, isn't it?
I think it's impossible. I mean, just one example. I think I've mentioned this on the Fontcast. You're literally under the Tasmanian State Service Act. You cannot make public servants forcibly redundant. You just can't sack them. It's not able to be done. The best you can do is abolish their job and then put them on a redeployment list for 12 months and maybe offer them a really big voluntary redundancy and hope they will take that.
And all of that costs money in the short term.
All that
doesn't it?
costs money in the short term, but you can't just say, look, Department of State Growth, we don't want you anymore, you're all sacked. Doesn't work that way. You're going to end up with no department and however many people work in state growth sitting around counting paper clips. So it's a really, really difficult thing to do in terms of reducing expenditure by reducing the size of the public service. And then if you try and cut programs, as you pointed out, happening yesterday with Bridget Archer, as soon as you start to squeeze funding for any program, some MP is going to put their hand up, most of the opposition, they're going to complain about it, and it's probably, if it's vaguely contentious, not going to happen.
And not just the opposition. I mean, this is where the crossbench comes into it, because everyone will have things they care deeply about. And they'll take it in turns, I guess, of being the person that says, well, no, this is an absolute priority. And in a lot of cases, they will be really valuable things. Like you said at the start, this is such a difficult equation that Erica Betts has inherited at a very difficult political time.
Yeah, I mean, I fear, and then let's not even talk about taxes, which he says he's not going to raise, but he will raise, because that's what the Parliament.
But that's not in his natural
Yeah.
That's not his natural inclination either.
That's what he says, but I reckon it's probably what's going to happen because of the nature of the Parliament. I think what's going to happen here, my biggest fear is we're going to get a sort of if those of us old enough to remember, a Joe Hockey, Tony Abbott 2014 budget, federal budget, which was on paper, a budget which massively reduced expenditure and brought the budget back into balance. The budget passed the Parliament, but all the individual, not all, but most of the individual saving programs contained within that budget never happened because they were stopped by either by the Senate or by massive pushback. Remember the Medicare co-payment, for example. And I fear that's what's going to happen here. We're going to have a budget which on paper saves $200 million a year, passes the Parliament. I think it will pass the Parliament, but the majority of the savings measures just won't happen. And so we'll be continuing to live in this fantasy land that we're fixing the budget when we're not. The government's going to get all this political pain, and then come 12 months later, we're going to find out they didn't actually achieve what they'd said they were going to do. That's what I think is a likely scenario.
We see a mini version of that every year when you say, oh, we're going to spend this much on health, and then inevitably you spend a lot more on health. Like the reality of the budget paper versus the reality is never, a circle. So anyway.
Yeah,
it's going to be fascinating. And then there's this, there's the budget committee, and some people are choosing not to be involved, I guess, because they don't want to have.
Oh yeah, you mean the multi-partisan budget panel or whatever it's called? Yes.
So the rationale for not being involved, I guess, is, well, we don't want to share the blame for what's going to be a very unpopular process. My argument is, I don't think, if Christy Johnston or the Greens were involved, anyone's going to blame them for the budget. I mean, Erica Betts is the one who's in the hot seat. So I'd be inclined to be involved just because you might be privy to more information than if you're on the outside. But that's just my inclination. What do you think on the politics on that one?
Oh, I mean, I think the Labor Party are wise not to be involved.
Oh, different for the opposition, yeah.
But all these other MPs, if they're not government MPs, they are opposition, sort of by extension, except perhaps David O'Byrne, who's signed up to a supply and confidence agreement. So, I mean, it's not unexpected. I think we'll see. I can't imagine Mr. George staying part of the process much longer either, to be frank. We'll see how things go. It's not really surprising. It was a nice attempt by the Libs to try and, share the pain, but it's a little bit too obvious.
Okay.
And just quickly, I know people are going to ask, well, that's great, Brad. You're always whinging about the budget. What's your solution? So just for the record, number one, stop new spending. Number two, stop new spending. And number three, do something about the unfunded superannuation liability, $400 million a year, which is coming straight off the budget bottom line. And when I said earlier, and Alex scoffed about Michael Laird being the worst treasurer ever, the reason I make that comment is because that's when that superannuation fund, that $1.5 billion, was raided and emptied to top up the budget at the time. And we are still paying the price for that every single year, $400 million out of the budget, enough to almost run the cops department. So, fix that problem, halve that problem, there's your savings right there.
You've still got the servicing the debt problem, though. Like, that's a dual issue now.
Yes,
I agree with the super, but now we're spending so much money just servicing the debt.
Yes, well, we're stuck with that for now, aren't we? We have to pay that down. But this is an issue which I think can and should be addressed. It just keeps getting put in the too hard basket, perhaps because, former and current Treasury secretaries and senior bureaucrats are all part of the scheme. They don't seem keen to touch it for some strange reason. Anyway, moving on. LegCo elections. So, as mentioned, 2 LegCo elections this year in May, Rosevears and Huon, and both promise to be fascinating. So, start with Rosevears. I was up in Launceston yesterday. I just took a temperature with a few people of what they think is going to happen. General view is, people are very aware of the local member up there, Jo Palmer, and she's a popular local member. Labor's got a candidate in the field, a teacher, I think Ben McKinnon. I don't think this will be a walkover for Ms Palmer, the Education Minister. I think LegCo elections are always tough. I think this will be tough for her. She only just got up last time with 50.5% of the vote against then independent candidate Janie Finlay, now Labor member. And Labor ran a candidate that election too, Alex.
Don't quiz me on who it was, but I thought Jo Palmer would have won that election more comprehensively. So I was surprised it got as close as it did last time. I still think she's in the box seat to hold a seat. I mean, incumbency still matters. And we saw Luke Edmonds, win pretty comfortably. I think he won every booth. He told us at the end of year drinks last year. So I think incumbency is a big help. But you can't rest on your laurels.
No. For the record, the Labor candidate last time was Jess Green.
Oh, right, who's now in Parliament.
It's just the Tasmanian political circle, isn't it? I think, as you said, Alex, I think she's the favourite, but it won't be a walkover. She can't take it for granted. And if, as is generally the case in these things, a high-profile independent enters the race, it could make things very, very interesting. And I'm hearing persistent rumours, and we'll see whether they get put to bed after this podcast, that perhaps the Launceston mayor might be interested in running.
Matthew
Garwood. That would really shake things up, wouldn't it?
Well, he shakes everything up that he's involved in. I mean, he's had a big couple of years. Wowee. That would be interesting. And a different sort of independent too, because normally the independent sort of comes from the middle left. I wouldn't describe him as middle left, would you?
I think he's an enigma. I don't think anyone really knows.
He is an enigma.
He was was he on The Voice or something, right?
I think that's where he rose to prominence. Yeah. Oh,
So
that's
anyway,
a curious one.
I'm not saying it's confirmed, but just a persistent rumour that I'm hearing. So we'll see what happens there. Very interesting.
Well, he'd be. I mean, I'm not sure whether a LegCo election is winnable against Jo Palmer, but he would certainly make a difference at a Hare Clark election. You could tell even when he was in all that strife with the business with the rock star, he had a lot of people in his corner.
He did. Yeah, he did.
A lot of people willing to say, we got your back. So he'd bring a few votes to the table. That's interesting. That could be a good one.
Keep an eye on that. All right. And the other election, as mentioned, is Huon, which is down the Huon. And I think, AJ, Labor really fancy their chances here against Dean Harris. Obviously, Labor...
Well, they got very close last time.
Dean amazingly won on green preferences, as I recall. And then, of course, prior to that Labor member was the very popular Dr. Bastian Seidel. Who was a sad loss to the Parliament when he left after a couple of years. He was their star performer, really. So that aside, I think this will be a close contest. I think Mr. Harris is going to have to work very, very hard.
Last time Labor ran Toby Thorpe, young environmentalist, and he did very well. Probably certainly went better than I expected. And this time they've got another good candidate in Abby McKibben.
Yes.
Who's got a pretty impressive resume, very much a Huon person. So I think they've put themselves in a winning position. And Dean Harris, he's...
hang on, he's called it a winning position.
No. I said, a winning position doesn't mean
maybe
you're guaranteed of winning.
On the front row of the starting grid.
Oh, yes.
To use an analogy.
To drive home the pun.
Yeah.
Dean Harris is a very likeable person, but he's not super high profile.
No.
He hasn't sort of... he goes about his work diligently, I would say. So Labor would think they're a chance.
Yeah, and I think they are. And there's also, at this stage, a high-profile independent in the race.
Yes.
Relatively high profile. So Kingborough, I think she's the deputy mayor now,
yes.
Claire Glade-Wright, and she's been recently announced as a Voices of Franklin candidate. Now, I had a look at that. That's not like an official Teal thing, but it's a pseudo-Teal thing. So...
fishing in the same pond as Peter George.
I think that's very good. And I think that's certainly going to, help Labor.
Maybe fishing in the same pond is,
Mr. Harris. So
the same farmed salmon pen as.
Haven't heard from Mr. George lately since.
Actually, funny you should say that, because I was looking on his Facebook page the other day. Very few updates because they were prolific for a while.
It must be.
So maybe he's had a bit of a break.
Not talking about dead salmon that aren't dead salmon or whatever it was. Right. Well, interesting times ahead in those two seats, Alex. And just a reminder, every seat, every election legco does count. Most votes are decided by one or two votes either way. So, if either of those seats changes, then it will make a big difference in terms of government legislation and...
we might need to adjust the whiteboard of truth.
We might need to. Is that still a thing, Alex?
Well, I can see it from here.
Yes, we could. Yeah, we might have to bring it back.
I'm sure there'll be a vote or two this year where the whiteboard of truth will be needed.
I think that's right. All right.
What's next?
Let's move on to Australia Day and public perception of Australia Day as the day to celebrate our fine country. So, for this edition, I did again ask my team at EMRS to go into the field and just check what people thought about the date. There's been remarkably little commentary about it so far this year, I think probably because of other federal matters that took place that have overridden it, but I'm sure this will become a talking point over coming days. So we did go into the field and we did ask, do people support 26th of Australia as 26th of January as Australia Day, and the results again, Alex.
Okay, so the results of Brad's Australia Day poll found that there is 55% support for the 26th of January being the date, 35% undecided. That's a big number given it's such a well canvassed issue, and just 10% against. And which is almost identical to last year.
I think I transcribed that. Should be 35% against and 10% undecided.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense,
it does,
Brad.
Doesn't it? Yes.
Okay, so let's. Do we want to start that again?
No, just get that's wrong. Okay. Well, I'll put the slide up on the YouTube for people who are watching.
So just for clarity's sake, 55% support, 35% against, and 10% undecided. Makes much more sense. And that's similar to last year where support was at 56%. So
basically unchanged over the last 12 months.
And it really feels like the debate has been unchanged for about the last 10 years. Like, it's not so much a national holiday anymore, it's a national debate about the holiday.
Well, it had. Yes, this year's been remarkably devoid of it because of other factors.
Yes,
but you're right.
Yeah.
It always seems to be, the debate about the debate. The debate about the date, not the celebration of the date. Now, there was a seat-by-seat breakdown, Alex. These are correct, so you can safely read these out.
So more support in the north, 64% in Braddon, 73% in Braddon, 64% in Bass, 59% in Lyons, and then less support down south, where 47% in Franklin and just 41% in Clark, with 50% against in Clark. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Andrew Wilkie is the federal member. It's a very progressive seat. So I'm not surprised by those results, Brad. What stands out to you?
No, look, they're completely predictable, in line with last year's results, as I recall, and more as reassuring as opposed to when the numbers that come in make sense intuitively. The north and the northwest are, and the rural areas are much more supportive of the date than the more progressive areas in the south. I think what we do see here in terms of Franklin, and we did see this as well in the gun buyback survey that EMRS also did earlier this week, Alex, is that Franklin is increasingly becoming a more progressive seat, more urbanised seat. The part of Franklin, the Huon part, is starting to be overtaken, if you like, by the Eastern Shore and the Kingborough parts, which seem to be more progressive. Now, there is a redistribution coming up this year, which may affect the boundaries of Franklin. We'll be interested to see what happens there, but certainly the way things are going, I think Franklin is fast closing on Clark as the most progressive seats in the state. And
that was borne out at the last state election, where there was room for Peter George, there was room for Rosalie Woodruff, there was room for a Labor independent and David O'Byrne. So that's the facts are bearing that out. The age breakdown's interesting because in the 18 to 34 category, not much support at all for the 26, 38% compared to 55% against. And then that sort of flipped on its head when it gets to 70 plus or even 55 to 69, where it's 54% yes, 34% no. So young people aren't a fan of the 26th.
But I mean, the general view, young people are more progressive. So again, I think these results are completely unsurprising and bear out broader political trends. So there you go, Australia Day, Monday, 26th of January. There'll be a big rally down the Murray Street probably and into Parliament Lawns talking about Invasion Day, but the great unwashed majority are still supportive of the day to celebrate Australia.
Yes, and there's been some savvy media clips doing the rounds that do remind us that the 26th isn't something that we've celebrated for hundreds of years. It's still a fairly new concept, so I don't personally understand the resistance to change it that much.
Oh, hang on, what's your electorate? We just need to adjust these numbers, add a plus on here.
I'm in Clark now.
Oh, well, there you go.
I've moved from Franklin to Clark. I haven't actually thought about the political ramifications of that when I get to vote next.
Have you changed your enrolment?
I shouldn't I? Yeah, no. Better get in there. Thank you for the reminder, Brad. No, I mean, and I say that because I just feel like it would be lovely if we could get to this stage of the year and not just have the Groundhog Day argument every year that, we've had it. Can we find something that we all feel more comfortable about? I don't know.
Oh, look, I mean, we did have, I haven't got the figures to hand, we did also ask the question about alternative dates and what people think of alternative dates. There's no consensus on any alternative date, and which is part of the problem in terms of changing it. There is no strong view that we should go for January 1st as Federation Day, or I think, was it May 27 when the Commonwealth Parliament first sat or whatever. There's just no consensus on any of those dates, which I think is part of the problem. My personal view, it's not going to make any difference. You change the date, we're still going to be arguing on Monday about what it means for Australia. Whether it's called Australia Day or not called Australia Day, we're still going to be arguing about it on the 26th of January. So I don't think that is going to in any way change the broader issues. So my personal view, the date's the date.
Okay. Good polling though.
Yep.
Very interesting.
Always and we'll be bringing you more of these exclusive insights on pole position as the year goes on. All right. We were going to wrap it there, but
No, we can't.
We can't because of events of yesterday. Alex was on the top of your tongue when you came in this morning. What do you make of it all with the federal coalition?
Well, the coalition split again. You know, and they got back together. It's like a Taylor Swift song. Very messy. I mean, for the first time in a long time, it seemed like the Prime Minister was under pressure. I mean, and I think we talked about it on the last episode of the Fontcast. You know, some of that pressure I thought was fair, some was grossly unfair. But, you know, whether it was fair or not, he was under pressure. And now, look what's happened. How do they do it? How can they not navigate this issue in a way that brings the coalition together, puts pressure on the government? Instead, we're back to talking about the Liberal leadership, the Nats leadership, whether the coalition has a future. There's the one nation of it all. It's a mess.
It is. Not entirely unexpected. I don't think things were particularly well thought through by the Leader of the Opposition when she, called for Parliament to come back to do what? Because it was inevitable they were going to be asked to consider laws which a large portion of her team would not support because there is an increasingly a large number of libertarian, pro-free speech minded people in the Liberal parties and national parties. So it was sort of like you cruising for a bruising by what she did, I've got to say. It got to where it got to. My view, and I think I may have said this before last year on the Fontcast when they broke up for the first time, the coalition that is, I think I'm in the minority, but I actually think it's a good thing for the Liberal Party that the Nationals have gone their own way. It allows the Liberals to focus on being Liberals, to develop a policy and a political narrative which addresses the concerns of the centre and the centre-right without having this constantly trying to appease the Nationals, who in turn are desperately trying to out-nation one nation. And you think about that and you look back, not just the last 12 months with the Liberal Party, but perhaps the last 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years, you can see, perhaps right back to Turnbull's time, how the National Party has been increasingly holding the Liberal Party back from being a party of the centre and the centre-right. So my view is I think it's actually a good thing. Don't get me wrong, one nation's a problem for the Libs as well. Perhaps we'll talk about that in future editions, but I think overall it's a good thing. It's long been a bugbear of mine. You talk about the coalition. Well, that's not even a party. There's no one on the ballot paper that is, Alex Johnston coalition. There are Liberal candidates or national candidates or LNP candidates. There's no coalition candidates. So we've spent all this time talking about a political brand that doesn't even exist. So, as I say, I think it allows them to focus on being themselves.
But what does that mean, though, Brad? Like, where do you go if you're the federal Libs? Here in Tasmania, the equation is obvious. The template's there. You're middle right, but not very right. You're Jeremy Rockcliffe, who's pretty socially modern but pro-business, and that's how you win elections. Where do they position themselves federally?
Well, they need to be Liberals. They need to find that identity, and so I think there's now an opportunity to find that identity without the Nationals.
How libertarian do you go, though? Because I've noticed this massive trend. Susan Lee got absolutely ratioed when she posted about the rationale behind supporting the amended legislation. It used to be that the left would attack. Now it's this sort of libertarian streak, sort of saying, you've let us down. That is a real cohort of voters, especially at a federal level. Now, how do you placate that part of the electorate who are going to go everywhere really with their votes? Some to One Nation, some to the Nats, some to independents,
Well, I mean, as I say, I think what they need to do is they need to focus on being a party of the centre. They need to talk about the economy. When was the last time you heard them talking about the economy? They need to talk about addressing the challenges that immigration is bringing, but they need to talk about it in an economic frame. They need to talk about it in a way that people understand and in a way that is actually proposing realistic and sensible solutions. At the moment, all that is missing and it's being prevented from, in my view, from happening. It has been because of they're having to try and deal with the right, and increasingly right means some of the Federal National Party today is not the Federal National Party of 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Tim Fisher, Mark Vaile, John Anderson, he's got a bit more right-wing as he's got older. But, the Federal National Party today is a lot further to the right than the Federal National Party of 25 years ago, and I think that has been a real problem for the Libs. So we'll see what happens moving forward. Of course they'll get back together if they need 76 seats. They've got 76 seats between them. So I don't.
But that's after an election?
Yeah. Well,
not before?
Well, they might get back before, but, it doesn't matter. I mean, everyone's going to understand that they'll get back together if they've got 76 seats between them. So I don't see it as being a hindrance to actually winning government in a practical sense. I just think it allows them to argue their own position and define their own position a bit more.
And it was said yesterday that the Nats' behaviour has made people rally around the Liberal leader, but does she survive this?
Oh, I think the general consensus is that's unlikely. We will see.
Who's the most likely replacement? Andrew Hastie?
No, I think it'll be Angus. Angus Taylor.
Okay. And is that the person that will take them to the next election, or are we talking Brendan Nelson again?
Yeah, well, I don't think Brendan's coming back.
But he was the leader, wasn't he, for a short time?
He was. Is
it a poison chalice, I guess, that Angus would be drinking from?
It's always hard after an election, and that's been Susan has had that poison chalice, as you pointed out. But I think Brendan was the first leader after 2007, and then the second leader after 2007 was Turnbull.
Yes.
And then the third leader took him to the next election, which was Abbott.
So maybe it's lucky number 3.
Maybe.
Does Andrew Hastie have a future as leader of the Liberal Party, you think?
He's certainly got a bright future ahead. I think he's suffered a blow or two this past week, if you've been watching what's happening on the socials. But he's certainly, he's got a bit of an X factor about him, but with an X factor comes positives and negatives.
And I tell you who was in the thick of things when it came to negotiating the legislation, that's Senator Duniam. How have you seen his performance?
Yes, Senator Duniam should disclose. He is a friend of mine, and he was Deputy Chief of Staff when we were in government under Will. He's certainly been everywhere, hasn't he? He's
shame he's
working hard.
He's in the upper house, isn't he? Or he could be.
Maybe he could switch. What do you reckon? I reckon Jono down to the Franklin. Julie Collins is going to retire soon. Maybe she's been there a long time. Anyway,
watch this space.
There you go. And as you alluded to, Alex, let's not forget the Nationals, Tasmania, where the Liberals have been in government for the last 12 years. Despite their best efforts, Tasmania. And I'll try again, but Tasmania is largely a Nationals-free zone.
They're looking for candidates, though, I hear.
Yes. All right. With that, we're at time. Alex, you said we'd keep it to 57 minutes. We've got to 57, which is not a bad effort. So,
looking forward to when we have a guest on.
Yes, well, we'll have
there was too much to cover this time to find room for a guest.
That's right.
It's an exciting addition, I think, to the pole position.
We are going to bring an exciting new guest.
And if you have suggestions, you know where to find us.
You do.
Hit us up. Send us a message. Who would you like to hear first guest on pole position?
In a couple of weeks' time. All right, so pole position is brought to you by Enterprise Marketing and Research Services when accuracy matters, as well as our valued media partners at Pulse Tasmania.